So the professional water boy of the Biden administration, Antony Blinken, came out to a Face the Nation interview. In the interview, he said, yeah, we're aware that Israel is committing war crimes, but we're going to continue to supply them with the weapons anyways. It must be hard to be Secretary of State for the United States because you're a professional hypocrite for a living. He also said that Israel doesn't have any credible plans in order to protect the civilians in Rafah or any plans after the war is over. But let's see how he tries to reason through this Face the Nation interview.
Mr. Secretary, is Israel living up to international humanitarian law standards?
The report that we put out, that in certain instances Israel acted in ways that are not consistent with international humanitarian law. There are criminal investigations that are going forward. Unlike most other countries in the world, Israel has the ability, the means, and the actions to self-correct. But we've been on this every single day.
Okay, what bothers me in what he said there, we're going to trust Israel to investigate themselves. Say if I violated international law and the rules of war. Would you then trust me to investigate whether or not I did that? I mean, I have all the incentive to lie and to say I did nothing wrong, partially because I don't want my country to be seen as a pariah and we're for killing civilians. So how can we trust them to do the right thing when it comes to investigating themselves?
So you have been able then to conclude that Israel has violated U.S. laws and weapon sharing agreements?
It's reasonable to assess that in a number of instances, Israel has not acted in a manner that's consistent with international humanitarian law.
So it's okay for them to violate international law only sometimes. During the beginning of the Ukraine war, we were certain they were committing war crimes. We were certain they were going after civilians on purpose. But with Israel, we're just like, we think they have the best intentions, and they tell us it's not deliberate government policy to kill Palestinians because we would have a lot more dead Palestinians if that were true. But they seem to be okay with blocking humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip, which is illegal under international law. You can't deprive civilian populations of food, water, and electricity. We criticize the Russian government when they are deliberately going after civilian infrastructure. But when Israel does it, it's complicated.
Is the U.S. slowing down the delivery of any weapons to Israel at this point beyond the 3,500 so-called dumb bombs?
As you know, Margaret, most of the population from Gaza displaced from the north and from central Gaza has gone to Rafah. There are about 1.4 million people there. And we said to Israel that we will not support an operation in Rafah, a major military operation, in the absence of a credible plan to protect civilians. There are certain systems that we're not going to be supporting and supplying for that operation.
And why should we? The American people are sick of supporting other countries' militaries, and a lot of these countries give healthcare to their citizens, and we keep being told that we can't give healthcare to our citizens, and apparently we got to fund the war in Ukraine endlessly. We're going to try to turn that into a repeat of Afghanistan for the Soviet Union. So Joe Biden pausing these weapons is just simply symbolic. Joe Biden could pick up the phone right now and call Bibi and saying, we're not going to give you any weapons anymore unless you start listening to us when we say you need a credible plan for Rafah. I guarantee you that would get their attention.
We believe two things. One, you have to have a clear, credible plan to protect civilians, which we haven't seen. Second, we also need to see a plan for what happens after this conflict in Gaza is over, and we still haven't seen that. Or if they leave and get out of Gaza, as we believe they need to do, then you're going to have a vacuum, and a vacuum that's likely to be filled by chaos, by anarchy, and ultimately by Hamas again.
Guarantee Hamas's recruitment numbers have gone through the roof because a lot of people have lost kids, their wives, unborn children. Do you think that's going to not radicalize a population to hating Israel? As long as the status quo continues, Israel just keeps on stealing more land in the West Bank. I don't think they're even interested in Gaza, to be honest with you. But now that it's been completely destroyed, what is going to fill that power vacuum? Is it just going to be Hamas 2.0? Or is just Hamas recruitment just going to go up and they're just going to de facto be the governing authority in Gaza?
So we've been working for many weeks on developing credible plans for security, for governance, for rebuilding. We haven't seen that come from Israel. We've been working with Arab countries and others on that plan. We need to see that too. We have the same objective as Israel. We want to make sure that Hamas cannot govern Gaza again. We want to make sure it's demilitarized. We want to make sure that Israel gets its leaders. That's what we're determined to do. We have a different way, and we think a more effective, durable way of getting that done.
Mr. Secretary, your national security memorandum that you signed says Israeli civilian harm mitigation efforts are, quote, inconsistent, ineffective, and inadequate. The prime minister himself said Israel assesses the IDF killed 14,000 terrorists and 16,000 civilians. Does the U.S. share the Israeli assessment that more civilians have been killed than actual terrorists?
Yes.
Yes, we do. This operation, this war in Gaza has had on the civilian population.
And yet you're still surging weapons to Israel.
Those have not been applied consistently. And effectively, there's a gap between the stated intent and some of the results we've seen. We're looking at the totality of what's happened. We think it's reasonable to assess, based on what's happened, that there have been acts that have been inconsistent with Israel's obligations under international humanitarian law.
So she just asked him directly, is Israel violating international law? And he said yes. So you're going to continue to give them the weapons even though they're violating international law. Well, it doesn't count when they do it.